Creepy doll from The Conjuring unleashes a third installment of the spin-off series.
Happening this weekend, the allegedly haunted doll Annabelle is in town.
The Real Annabelle. The air smells different in Monroe, Connecticut. It's not just the autumn leaves decomposing beneath your feet, or the musty scent of old colonial homes that dot the tree-lined streets. No, there's something else. Something that makes your skin crawl without knowing why, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the atmosphere itself seems to hold its breath. For decades, this sleepy New England town was home to something that shouldn't exist. Something that defied every rational explanation we cling to when darkness falls and we hear sounds that have no earthly source. Behind the white picket fence of 94 Knollwood Street, in a room the Warrens called their occult museum, sat the most dangerous doll in existence. Shelves sagged under the weight of cursed relics, crucifixes, and artifacts dragged back from cases all over the country. And inside a wooden case with glass doors, a hand-painted sign nailed to the front that read, "Positively do not open. Annabelle watched in silence." (1970) In Hartford, Connecticut, a mother walks through the cramped aisles of a hobby store. She's looking for the perfect birthday gift for her daughter Donna, who's just turned 28 and is working as a nursing student. Her fingers trace over handmade quilts and ceramic figurines until they land on something that makes her smile. A Raggedy Ann doll with bright red yarn hair and that innocent, lopsided grin we all remember from childhood. The doll's button eyes seem to follow her movements as she lifts it from the shelf. But that's just a trick of the light, right? The way shadows fall at just the wrong angle, creating the illusion of awareness where none should exist. She pays the clerk, probably didn't cost more than a few dollars, and drives home, completely unaware that she's just purchased a gateway to hell. When Donna unwrapped the doll, the apartment was filled with that particular silence you get in old buildings. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of too many sounds layered on top of each other. She placed the doll on her bed, propping it against the pillows like a cheerful sentinel. The doll's permanent smile seemed to brighten the whole room. Donna probably thought it was perfect. Something to remind her of childhood innocence in a world where she spent her days learning about sickness and death. Here's the thing about innocence. Sometimes it's just ignorance wearing a prettier mask. At first, it was nothing, or what Donna and her roommate Angie convinced themselves was nothing. The doll would be sitting upright on Donna's bed when she left for her hospital rotations at 6 in the morning. The apartment would be empty, completely, verifiably empty, until she returned 12 hours later. But somehow, the doll had moved. Maybe just a few inches. Maybe turned slightly to face the door instead of the window. Donna stares at the doll, trying to remember exactly how she'd positioned it that morning. Had the arms been crossed? Were the legs tucked under its dress or stretched out? The more she stared, the less certain she became. Memory is a funny thing. It edits itself, rewrites history to make sense of the impossible. But movement was just the beginning. About a month into their supernatural nightmare, Donna and Angie started finding notes, handwritten in a child's shaky scrawl on parchment paper that neither of them had ever purchased. The messages were always the same. Help us. Help Lou. Simple, desperate pleas that appeared overnight like prayers answered in reverse. Lou was Angie's boyfriend, a skeptical, practical guy who'd never believed in anything he couldn't see, touch, or fix with his own hands. The kind of man who checked the locks twice before bed and kept a baseball bat by the door, not because he believed in ghosts, but because he believed in very human dangers. From the moment he first saw the doll, something in his gut clenched like a fist, the same instinct that makes animals flee before earthquakes, the primitive part of our brain that still remembers when humans were prey. Get rid of it, he kept telling Donna, but she'd grown attached to the thing. Maybe it was the nursing student in her, trained to care for anything that seemed helpless. Or maybe it was something else, something that wanted to stay and knew exactly which heartstrings to pull. Things kept happening, and one night, Donna found blood on the doll's hands. The metallic scent filled her nostrils as she leaned closer, that distinctive smell that every nurse learns to recognize. 3 drops on the chest, dark stains on the backs of the fabric hands, as if the doll had been clutching something that bled. But what could a Raggedy Ann doll possibly clutch hard enough to draw blood? Before we finish the rest of Annabelle's chilling story, I want to share something just as fascinating. I recently came across the Magnets Media course, and honestly, it feels like opening a forbidden book of YouTube knowledge. Inside, it breaks down exactly how to grab attention, keep viewers hooked like they're trapped in a horror story, and grow a channel to millions. If you've ever dreamed of creating videos that people can't look away from, the same way you can't look away from Annabelle's eyes, this course shows you how. You'll find the link in the description. One night, Lou was staying at Donna and Angie's apartment. Donna was working a hospital shift, so it was just him and Angie. Lou had never liked the doll. From the first moment he saw it, something in his gut told him it wasn't right. As he sat in the apartment, an uneasy feeling came over him. He later described it as the sense of being watched, of something standing just behind him. Against his better judgment, he went to check Donna's room, where the doll was kept. The room was empty. No sign of disturbance, just Annabelle, sitting calmly on the bed. But the air felt heavy, charged, and Lou couldn't shake the feeling that something was there with him. Then it happened. He doubled over in sudden pain, like invisible claws had raked across his chest. When he opened his shirt, 7 distinct scratches marked his skin, some on his chest, some on his stomach. The marks burned, red and raw. Lou stumbled backward, gasping, one hand pressed to his chest. When he looked up, the doll was still sitting in the chair, motionless, innocent. Within 2 days, they were gone. No scars, no trace. That was the breaking point. Donna and Angie called their Episcopal priest, Father Hegan, who listened with growing concern. Realizing it was beyond his experience, he contacted a higher authority, Father Cook. And Father Cook made the call that would define the case. He reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren. When Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived at Donna's apartment, they brought with them tools of their trade: holy water in small vials, crucifixes of various sizes, and equipment to document unusual phenomena. Most important of all, they brought experience, decades spent investigating events that science couldn't explain. Ed, a self-taught demonologist, had cataloged countless ways evil could manifest in the world. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, claimed to sense presences and energies others could not. When she first focused on the Raggedy Ann doll, she immediately sensed something was wrong. This was no ordinary haunting. This was not a lost or confused spirit. From the very beginning, they knew it was something far darker, something intent on deception, something that had been lying to everyone. See, before calling the Warrens, Donna and Angie had consulted a medium. The woman, whose name has been lost to history, claimed that a spirit inhabited the doll, a little girl who wanted love and attention. She just wanted to find a family who would care for her. Donna and Angie, their hearts breaking for this lost child, gave permission for Annabelle to stay. They welcomed her into their home with open arms. They had no idea they just invited a demon inside. The doll had been manipulating them from the beginning, starting small with subtle movements, then escalating to scratches on Lou and the mysterious notes pleading for help. It was clever, patient, and deceptive, the kind of malevolent presence the Warrens had spent decades studying. The Warrens arranged for Father Cook to perform an exorcism of the apartment, not of the doll itself, which wasn't possessed, but of the space the demon had claimed as its own. And through it all, the doll sat motionless, that permanent smile never wavering. When the Warrens finally took possession of the doll, they made a decision that probably saved their lives. They refused to take the highway home. Instead, they wound their way through the back roads of Connecticut, the doll secured in a cloth bag in their back seat. But the demon wasn't finished with them. Every few miles, their car would stall. It would simply die, as if someone had yanked out the key. This happened consistently at sharp curves, places where a stalled car would be invisible to oncoming traffic until it was too late to stop. Ed would restart the engine, hand steady despite the supernatural assault, and they'd drive another few miles before it happened again. Always at the most dangerous spots. Always when other cars were approaching from behind or around blind corners. Finally, Ed had enough. He pulled over, took out a vial of holy water, and sprinkled it over the cloth bag containing the doll. The car started immediately and ran perfectly for the rest of the journey home. The Warrens Occult Museum occupied a room of their Monroe home for nearly 7 decades. Shelves were filled with objects collected from their cases across the country, items that had been linked to hauntings, curses, or unexplained phenomena. Each object told a story of someone's encounter with the inexplicable. The air there had a weight to it, thick and oppressive like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. Your footsteps would echo strangely, as if the space were much larger than it appeared. And everywhere you looked, there were eyes, painted on masks, carved into statues, embedded in dolls, all seeming to track your movement. At the center of it all sat Annabelle. The doll was secured in a wooden case with a glass front, reinforced and blessed by priests. A handwritten sign warned visitors, positively do not open. Month after month, year after year, Annabelle remained there, that innocent smile never changing. But the case itself told a different story. The glass was scratched from the inside, as if something with claws had tried repeatedly to break out. The crucifixes would occasionally fall off for no apparent reason, clattering to the floor in the middle of the night when the museum was empty. Visitors would report feeling watched, followed, pursued by an intelligence that radiated malevolence. The temperature around Annabelle's case was always several degrees colder than the rest of the room. Sensitive individuals would become nauseous just looking at her, as if their bodies were rejecting her presence on a cellular level. But some visitors weren't content to simply observe. The first incident happened in the early years, when a young priest visited the museum. He was new to his calling, full of the confidence that comes from theological study, but lacking the wisdom that comes from real experience with evil. When Ed Warren explained the precautions they'd taken with the doll, the priest laughed. An hour later, driving back to Hartford on Route 84, the priest saw something impossible in his rearview mirror. For just a moment, Sitting in his back seat was the Raggedy Ann doll. The priest's car swerved off the highway and smashed. He survived, barely, spending weeks in the hospital with injuries that should have killed him. But he never forgot what he saw in that mirror, and he never mocked the supernatural again. The second incident was far worse. A young man, visiting the museum with his girlfriend, found the whole thing hilarious. He banged on Annabelle's case with his fist, laughing at what he called ridiculous superstitions. He dared the doll to hurt him, challenging it to prove its power. Ed Warren immediately asked him to leave. The man was still laughing as he walked out the door. 3 hours later, riding his motorcycle home with his girlfriend on the back, the man lost control on a straight stretch of highway. No other vehicles were involved. No mechanical failure that investigators could identify. The bike simply went off the road and struck a tree at full speed. The man was killed instantly. His girlfriend survived with severe injuries, and as she lay in the hospital bed, she told anyone who would listen about their final conversation. They had been laughing about the doll, mocking the warnings, when suddenly the bike began to wobble uncontrollably. The Warrens Occult Museum closed permanently in 2019 following Lorraine Warren's death and mounting pressure from local authorities. The narrow residential street couldn't handle the crowds of curiosity seekers, and neighbors complained about people prowling the property at all hours, drawn by morbid fascination with objects that should be left alone. But Annabelle's story didn't end there. In 2025, the doll began touring the country as part of a paranormal exhibition called Devils on the Run. The very idea horrified Chris McKinnell, the Warrens' grandson, who warned that moving the doll was dangerous beyond comprehension. And indeed, his fears proved justified in July 2025, when Dan Rivera, the 54-year-old lead investigator organizing the tour, died suddenly in a Gettysburg, Pennsylvania hotel room. Rivera had spent the previous day presenting the doll to paying customers, allowing them to take photos and ask questions. Today, Annabelle resides under the guardianship of comedian Matt Rife and YouTuber Elton Casti, who purchased the Warren house and assumed responsibility for the entire occult collection. They plan to reopen the museum for tours and overnight stays, turning humanity's encounter with genuine evil into entertainment. But here's what they don't understand, what most people refuse to accept. This isn't a game. This isn't a movie prop or a Halloween decoration. According to those who knew her best, Annabelle isn't possessed by a demon. She is a demon, using an innocent child's toy as a vessel for something that should not exist in our world. The Warrens investigated over 10,000 cases during their career, but they always said Annabelle was the worst thing they ever encountered. Not because she was the most powerful, but because she was the most patient, the most deceptive, the most willing to wait decades for the perfect moment to strike. And with her being on tour as we speak, that moment might be closer than you think.